to speak out about the massacre of Balangiga, Samar, Philippines, September 28, 1901, is one of the bloodiest events of the Philippine-American War and probably the most bloody event in the history of the country. This event was part of the Philippine-American War, which went on from February 4th, 1899 to July 2nd, 1902. In the end, 200,000 Filipino civilians' lives were lost, and 20,000 Filipino defenders of the Philippine independence and about 4,200 American colonizers died. The Philippine-American War took place after the Philippines gained independence from Spain. The Philippines, along with Guam, Puerto Rico, and Cuba, were just given for a small price to the United States as a result of the Spanish-American War. These terms were defined in the Treaty of Paris of 1898, dated December 10, 1898. The Filipinos were happy to gain their independence from Spain, who controlled the archipelago from 1565 to 1898. They were ready to control their own country, but they were tricked by the Spaniards and their eventual new rulers, the United States. Spain made a deal with the United States and gave them Guam, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Philippines. In fact, the United States paid $20 million for the Philippines. Another obscure fact was the Americans didn't enter the war because of their so-called benevolence for Cuban people, but more so because they wanted to control the sugar businesses that they owned in Cuba. Now, back to the Filipinos. Naturally, after having just fought a war with the Spaniards for independence, the Filipinos were in fighting mode and were willing to fight for their independence. They actually thought that they were fighting for their independence in the Spanish-American War, but found out soon after that Spain just handed them over to the United States for a small fee. On August 11th, 1901, the American infantry arrived in Balangiga, and in September 1901, that's where our story of the Bells of Balangiga begins. The massacre began because Americans who were in Samar started to harass a Filipino woman who was working at her store. The men in the town defended her, and because of that, the Americans wanted to destroy the vicinity, because how dare those native Filipinos reject harassment? Of course, Americans didn't fight fair. The Filipinos fought with with the weapons they had, and the Americans used all the gunpowder they had. The town of Balangiga used their church bells to rally the Filipino troops in order to fight the invading colonizers. News of the Balangiga attack was written in the U.S. newspapers to demonize the evil native Filipinos who were fighting for their freedoms. The bells of Balangiga are actually in the United States, specifically Wyoming, as the Americans need to have a display of their victory over those natives who had the audacity to fight back. I could speak more about this topic, but I am probably near the 3-minute mark, so I want to close with the quote from General Jacob Howling Jake Smith. His order to his soldiers when he was in Balangiga, Samar was, "I want no prisoners. I wish you to kill and burn, and the more you burn and kill, the better it will please me. I want all persons killed who are capable of bearing arms in actual hostilities against the United States. Kill everyone 10 years old and older." His troops burned and looted the town of Balangiga. When Cole Littleton Walker asked General Jacob Smith for clarification on the age limit, Smith told him 10 years old. LTC Walker refused to carry out the orders to kill the 10-year-olds or carry out summary executions, so he was charged with a court-martial. He was later acquitted, but he was convicted and drummed out of the United States Army. The United States even continued to enforce a scorched earth policy until the end of the war in 1902. They wanted nothing less than total destruction of the town and the people to make them an example. This massacre is still celebrated because the bells of Balangiga are still displayed in the Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the Trophy Park. I'd also like to add that the propaganda of the time, in an article in the Minneapolis Journal as it had as a headlines, "The Acme of Treachery." The article talked about how the Filipinos is a master of treachery and that the incident at balangiga was typical of Filipino character. So when people of color rise up to fight their oppressors, it's treachery. Going into a country and taking it over isn't treacherous. It's righteous in the eyes of the foreign colonizer, and in this case, the United States. Thank you.